How could Stevie Wonder, a blind musician, outperform stars who had every advantage? At just 13 years old, Stevie recorded his first #1 hit. He couldn't see the crowd, but still outperformed everyone. But how did he turn his blindness into greatness? Well, to understand his story, we need to go back to the moment that made the world take notice. Stevie Wonder was born on May 13, 1950, in Saginaw, Michigan. But from the start, his life was different. He was born too early, and a condition called retinopathy of prematurity caused him to lose his sight shortly after birth. Even though Stevie couldn't see, he found his passion in music. At just 4 years old, he began playing the piano. He could feel the music and hear the notes in his head. By 9, he was playing the harmonica, drums, and even the bass guitar, completely by ear. Stevie didn't need to see or read music. He could just play what he felt. Stevie's mother, who believed in his talent, made sure he had every chance to grow as a musician. She supported him by getting him the best music training she could find, even though they didn't have much money. But despite all the hard work, Stevie faced huge challenges. He was blind in a world made for people who could see, and his path wasn't going to be easy. When Stevie was 11, everything changed. He was performing in a church when Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown Records, heard him play. Gordy was amazed by Stevie's voice and musical talent. He knew right away that Stevie had something special, even though the young boy was blind. Stevie was signed by Motown, a major record label, and his music career began. But even with all the excitement, there were doubts. People wondered how a blind child could make it in the music business. How could he perform on stage, read music, or even see his bandmates? Many people thought his blindness would hold him back. But then Stevie proved them wrong. At just 12 years old, he released his first album. His music wasn't just good, it was amazing. His natural talent, passion, and love for music made him stand out. Even though he couldn't see the audience, he could feel their energy, and that was enough. Stevie Wonder showed the world that being blind didn't mean he couldn't be a superstar. His challenges didn't stop him. They helped him find a new way to connect with music and the world around him. Stevie Wonder's big break came at a time when most children his age were still figuring out basic hobbies. By the time he was 13, he had already released a few records under Motown's guidance. But the real shocker happened in 1963, during a live performance that changed everything. It was at the Regal Theater in Chicago, where Motown stars would showcase their talents. Stevie, introduced as Little Stevie Wonder, took the stage with his harmonica in hand. People weren't sure what to expect from a blind teenager who wasn't even in high school yet. But then, he started playing a song called Fingertips. The audience felt his energy immediately. The beat was infectious, and Stevie's harmonica solos were unlike anything they had heard. He roamed around the stage, feeling every note, bouncing with excitement. The crowd responded by clapping, cheering, and shouting for more. But then came the twist. Stevie kept going, extending the song with a spontaneous jam session. The band had ended their part, but Stevie continued, pulling everyone back into the groove. Motown decided to capture that performance and turn it into a record, which they titled Fingertips Part 2. It became an instant sensation on the radio, shooting straight to the top of the charts. Suddenly, the blind kid from Michigan wasn't just a novelty act. He was a genuine star with a #1 hit. Critics who once doubted him had to step back and reconsider. How could a teenager who couldn't see the audience command them like a seasoned showman? The reason was simple. Stevie didn't rely on sight, he relied on sound, timing, and the pulse of the crowd. He felt their excitement through their cheers, which fueled his performance. That night in Chicago wasn't just another concert. It was a pivotal moment that proved he could hold his own in front of any crowd, no matter how big or skeptical. Therefore, the release of Fingertips Part 2 marked a turning point in Stevie's life. He gained fans from all walks of life, opening the door to countless opportunities in music. The world began to see him not as a blind artist, but as a brilliant performer who happened to be blind. From that moment on, Stevie Wonder was no longer just a promising Motown act. He was an unstoppable force. After Stevie Wonder's early success as a young teenager, many people thought it might be just a phase. But they quickly learned they were wrong when he kept releasing songs that only got bigger and better. By the mid-1960s, Stevie was working closely with top Motown writers and producers, while also developing his own unique sound. He blended soul, pop, and rhythm and blues in ways that felt fresh and exciting. But then he did something most artists hadn't tried before. He started using synthesizers. Back in the 1960s, synthesizers were considered new and experimental, yet Stevie saw them as a chance to push music in a bold direction. Instead of sticking to a safe, familiar style, he merged electronic tones with classic instruments, creating a brand new sound that made him stand out from other Motown acts. As a result, by the late 1960s and early 1970s, he was releasing albums that fans and critics praised as groundbreaking. In 1972, he made a huge statement with the album Music of My Mind. This record proved that Stevie wasn't just a singer, he was also a skilled writer, producer, and instrumentalist with a clear artistic vision. But his next move was even bigger. Later that same year, he released Talking Book, which included hits like Superstition and You Are the Sunshine of My Life. These songs soared up the charts and won him multiple Grammy Awards. People began to see Stevie Wonder as more than just another Motown star. He was a true musical force. Then, in 1973, Inner Visions took his career to a higher level. Unlike typical pop albums, Inner Visions focused on social issues such as racism and poverty. Songs like Living for the City gave a raw look at life in poor urban areas, showing that Stevie cared deeply about the world around him. He wasn't just creating hits, he was raising awareness and challenging listeners to think about important problems. Stevie's greatest triumph of the 1970s came in 1976 with Songs in the Key of Life. This double album was packed with songs about love, life, and hope. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece, while fans embraced it with open arms. Featuring layered vocals, creative instrumentals, and a bold vision, Songs in the Key of Life climbed to the top of the charts and earned multiple Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year. This proved Stevie had truly outshined many of his peers, not by relying on sight, but by having an extraordinary sense of sound and music. By the late 1970s, Stevie Wonder was a global superstar. He had mastered multiple styles, soul, funk, pop, rock, and continued to push the limits of what music could be. Blindness never held him back. Instead, it seemed to sharpen his focus on each note, beat, and melody. In doing so, Stevie Wonder rose to a level of greatness few artists have ever reached. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Stevie wrote songs that tackled social issues, including poverty and racism. But then he took it a step further by actively campaigning for political change. For example, he was a key figure in the fight to make Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday a national holiday. Stevie traveled, performed benefit concerts, and spoke at events to highlight the importance of honoring Dr. King's legacy. Therefore, when President Ronald Reagan signed the holiday into law, Stevie's role in that achievement was unmistakable. But Stevie Wonder's efforts didn't end with politics. He continued to support humanitarian causes worldwide, such as charity concerts aimed at eradicating hunger and advocating for people with disabilities. Although he couldn't see the faces of those in need, he felt their struggle and dedicated his platform to amplifying their voices. His empathy, combined with his love for humanity, made him more than just a music icon. It made him a champion for change. In the studio, Stevie never grew complacent. Even after achieving massive success, he kept experimenting with new styles, bringing in fresh collaborators, and exploring new technologies. He fused pop, R&B, funk, jazz, and more, showing that the potential of music was limitless in his hands. But then, instead of letting fame go to his head, he remained humble, often crediting his faith and family for keeping him grounded. His albums continued to resonate with listeners across generations, speaking to universal themes like love, hope, and unity. Songs like I Just Called to Say I Love You might sound simple, but they carry a heartfelt message about connection, even when distance separates people. In a world often plagued by division, Stevie's voice reminded everyone that our shared humanity matters more than our differences. Because of his timeless music, Stevie has inspired countless artists, from pop stars like Michael Jackson to modern R&B singers. Even rock musicians have cited his unique melodies and soulful performances as major influences. It's hard to find a corner of popular music untouched by Stevie's innovation. He also demonstrated that a disability does not define a person's capabilities. When others placed limits on him because he was blind, he found creative ways to adapt and succeed. By doing so, he proved that real vision comes from passion, determination, and belief in one's calling. He couldn't see the stage lights, but he felt the energy they provided. He couldn't watch the crowd's reactions, but he heard their cheers loud and clear. Today, Stevie Wonder stands as a living legend. His music, philanthropy, and relentless pursuit of excellence remind us that true greatness isn't about what you lack. It's about what you bring to the world. His legacy still keeps shining. He played the harmonica, piano, and drums, impressing Motown and the world. But then with Fingertips Part 2, he proved blindness couldn't limit him. He explored synthesizers, merged genres, and created timeless albums like Songs in the Key of Life. But then he overcame every hurdle with determination. Therefore, his music didn't just entertain, it opened minds to social issues and unity. He also campaigned to recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day, showing his power reached beyond the stage. From a boy who couldn't see to shaping music and culture, he truly set a bright, shining example.